Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our next webinar, Why Did My Course Handicap Change? My name is Jason Funderburg. I'm joined by the member services staff, John Manos, Steve Latos, and Mario Mackey, who's going to be presenting today. Before I kick it over to Mario, just wanted to remind everyone that today's presentation is going to be recorded, and that is going to be listed on our website at gapgolf.org/gap-webinars. Another reminder, we are going to have a question and answer section throughout. So anytime you guys do have any questions, feel free to submit those to us and we will get to them through the broadcast. So Mario, are we ready to get it kicked off?
Yeah, let's do it, Jason. All right, thank you, Jason, for that introduction. And we are glad to be here for the fifth of our course rating and handicap webinars over the past week and a half or so. This one is all about why your course handicap changed. So one of the new rules and changes in the World Handicap System that was introduced in January 1st of this year is changes to the course handicap formula. And we need to talk today about why that's important. It's something that'll be very noticeable once we hopefully soon are back out on golf courses all across the area. So it is one of the most noticeable changes in WHS. Like I said, it is something that affects everybody. It's how many strokes you're getting when you're out there on the golf course. We all notice it, and let's talk about why it has changed. Before we talk about the course handicap, there is a slight change to the handicap index formula that I'll review, and we'll talk about why that's not as drastic compared to the course handicap, because that is the bigger change possible. We'll also talk about a new term in the World Handicap System, that is the playing handicap, and what that means and how that affects you. So first, let's talk about the handicap index formula changes. The handicap index, this is your daily index. Now it's revised every time you play golf, as we've talked about in a previous session. This is the one to a decimal point. And let's talk about what's different this year. So previously, the handicap index represented the lowest 10 of your 20 most recent score differentials, multiplied by 0.96 and truncated at the 10th digit. In the World Handicap System, we're only taking the average of the lowest 8 of the most recent 20 score differentials rounded to the nearest 10th. So it's a little simpler there. We are taking 8 of 20 instead of 10 of 20, and there's no other additional multiplication, and the rounding is a little bit different. So what that's resulted in, and I threw at the bottom of the screen there what the score differential formula is for those of you who missed that in a previous session, but it involves every score you post, you have a formula involving 113, a constant, divided by the slope rating of the course you play, multiplied by the adjusted gross score you posted that day, minus the course rating and minus any adjustment for the playing conditions calculation, which Steve Latos had a webinar on Monday of this week. So what this has resulted in for most people is you'll see on January 1st this year, your handicap rose or fell slightly, 0.1, 0.2, not a drastic change for most golfers. So if you went from a 9.9 to a 9.8, that's not a huge deal, right? That's not a big major change that you're going to notice, but it does make a big difference with the new formula for course handicap. So let's look at that now. In the old system, your course handicap equaled the handicap index you have that day multiplied by the slope rating of the tee set you're playing divided by 113. And in the World Handicap System, that same basic formula, that takes up the majority of the formula, but we have a new component this year. That is an additional component of course rating minus par. So again, we're taking the same formula we had before in the old USGA handicap system, but adding in a new component of course rating minus par. And another change there is that now the rounding takes place at the end of the formula, a little bit different there. So even a slight difference between course rating and par can make an impact on your handicap here. So why course rating minus par is big deal and different for us is because it now eliminates the need for section 3-5 of the old USGA handicap system. In that previous system, when players competed from different tees, what we were told to do was take the difference in course ratings and apply that to make the match more equitable. So if there was a 3-stroke difference between the blue tee and the white tee on a golf course, you were to add the 3 strokes to somebody playing the higher rated set of tees or subtract it from someone playing the low rated set of tees. But now in the World Handicap System, we have course rating minus par included in the formula. There's no need for that additional adjustment based on the tee set played, as we're already considering it. So basically, it's automatically done in the formula now. There's nothing manual to be done administratively or anything like that. You just look up your handicap from that tee set, your course handicap, and once you find that, we've already taken into account the tee you're playing. There's no need for an additional adjustment of any kind. So before we move on to some specific examples of how this change can look, Jason, did we have any questions pop up on that first section?
Yep, just one so far. In a Saturday match, my partner will play from the white tees, I will play from the gold tees, and the opponents will play from the blue. Could you go over the scoring on a typical hole, any hole?
On a typical, what was the end of that, Jason? Sorry.
Typical hole.
So what we would see there would be, and I'm going to bring it up here, a little longer question there, but give me 1 second here. So everybody is going to be assigned a course handicap from the tee set they play now, as I said. So the person playing the white tee would get their assignment for their course handicap. The gold tee person would get theirs, and then the blue tee person would get theirs. Now, we don't need to do any additional adjustment because we're already taking into play the course rating minus par for that tee set. So then we would dot the scorecard accordingly. There's a couple different ways we could do that, but you would dot the card accordingly based on those handicaps the individual has, whether we want to play off the low handicap and the lowest of the three would go to 0 and we would subtract that from the others, or you played at the original handicap, 100% handicap all three golfers had, and the dots would just be done accordingly. So there's a few different options there, but that's the way we would handicap the individual golfers there. We don't need to do any additional adjustments now. Anything else, Jason, before we move on to the next section?
Nope, not yet. Just recommend everyone, if you do have a question, just submit it to us and we will get back to you.
So let's look at how this really looks on the golf course and how this looks for individuals. So the key now is that the course handicap is the number of strokes the player needs to play to par. And that's something that's different in the USGA from the USGA handicap system in the new world handicap system. Course handicap is also used in the application of net double bogey, which is your maximum hole score per any hole, and net par, which is what you use when you did not play a hole. Both of those terms, we've gone over them in previous sessions, but for those of you who were not on one of those sessions, that is for maximum hole score, the max you can post on one hole is double bogey plus any handicap strokes you were to receive. So that's termed as called net double bogey. Net par, same deal. If you didn't play the 17th and 18th holes of a match, you can still post that score using net par. That is par plus any handicap strokes you can receive there. And of course, handicap is what you use to determine how many strokes you would have received there to determine those figures. So let's look at an example of the formula again. I've also indicated again there with that formula what the new part is in green on the right, plus course rating minus par. And here's an example of how that works for a real life calculation. So you have Jalen Rieger as a 9.1 handicap index playing the silver tee at Lulu Country Club. His course handicap would be calculated as follows. He's a 9.1 index. We multiply it by the slope rating of that tee, which is 124. We divide it by 113, and then we add in that new component of 67.3 minus 71, and he comes out to a 6. So this is an individual who's a 9.1 handicap index. Last year, most likely, would have been probably a 9 or 10 or maybe an 11 course handicap from the different tee sets. And this year, he's a 6 from that silver tee specifically because the course rating is lower than the par. So he's actually being subtracted those strokes at the end of the formula, as you can see. Since that formula now includes course rating minus par, your course handicaps can change significantly, and that's what we want to go over today. So as I showed earlier, there could be a minimal change in handicap index, but what we want to do are take this course handicap and show you why it's important to look at the change here, because there might be a minimal index in your handicap index, but the significant change is going to come in your course handicap. So here's an example from a member of our staff and how it could look for him. This is Dan Schofield from the GAP staff. In 2019, he was a single digit handicapper at 9.9. And using the changes I discussed earlier about course handicap and handicap index, his index only changed 0.1. So he went from a 9.9 to a 9.8, not a significant change, very similar handicap index to last year. But if we look on the right side of this page, this is his course handicap from all the different tee sets at Williamsport Country Club. You can see this ranges from a green tee at 64.6 to the blue tee at 71.3. And if you look there, those two columns on the right, it's a par 71 from all tee sets. Last year, Dan, as a 9.9 handicap index, ranged from a 10 to an 11, no matter which tee set he played at Williamsport Country Club under the USGA handicap system. And now, this year, under the World Handicap System, he ranges from a 3 to an 11. So obviously a significant change and something that a lot of golfers may not have seen yet, especially with us, unfortunately, not being out to play on the golf course too much yet. It's something that you're going to notice when you get out and start playing for the year. Your course handicaps can change significantly, but again, that's because we've included course rating minus par. So how does this make sense? How is this fair and equitable? We'll keep that same slide up there for those same tee sets and the same golfer. And let's look at 2019 versus 2020. In 2019, for the blue tee versus the green tee, the top one versus the bottom one, there was a 1-stroke difference in course handicap, as you can see in that fourth column there, 10 versus 11. Plus, using the old section 3-5, there was a 7-stroke difference. It was from 64.6 to 71.3. You round that up, that's the 7-stroke difference. The overall difference between those two tee sets was 8 strokes. Now, if we use the 2020 formula, we result in a straight, we just look at that far right column. From the blue tee, it's 11. The green tee, it's a 3. The result, again, an 8-stroke difference. So while the math has changed, while the methods have changed, the difference between two tee sets from last year to this year, 8 strokes last year, 8 strokes this year. And that's one of the key takeaways we want you to have here is that the formulas change, the methods change, but the overall end result is going to be similar. There may be some changes depending on rounding, but you're going to be looking at a similar number. So Jason, I know I went over a lot of information there about how a golfer's handicap can look there this year with the new course handicap changes. Do we have any questions on those last couple slides?
Nothing so far. We did have a couple more specific questions that Steve is doing a great job of getting back to everyone individually.
Excellent. Yeah, and I know Jason may have mentioned that earlier, but we do have Steve Latos and John Manos from our member services department in that questions area are able to respond directly to questions you have there as well. So please feel free to submit them that way. If anything else comes up and you have any questions for us, we can answer.
Got a quick one here for you, Mario. Why is there such a difference between white and gold?
In the example we gave there?
Mm-hmm.
So let's go back to that and put it up here. 1 second. So the difference between white and gold there, if we're looking at there, it's really going to be rounding there. It's a 0.7 difference, but when we take into account there, I'd have to take a look there. We could put the whole formula up there, but it's really, you get some rounding issues where, again, we're taking the index to get that course handicap. If we go back a couple slides there. So we have the initial calculation is the index multiplied by that slope rating. And then we're dividing that by 113 plus that course rating minus par. So it's not just the difference there of 67.7 and 67.0. You also have that slope rating difference of 120 and 115. So there's 2 factors in play there that are both coming into play to cause that difference from 9 strokes to 6 strokes between those tee sets.
And Mario, if I could hop in really quick,
Yep.
Just notice those course ratings are only 0.7 apart in the slide. That was a typo on our side. It should be, the white tee should be 69.7. So the white tee is almost 3 strokes higher.
I was going to do the math, but not on the screen there, but thank you, Steve. But yeah, we will tweak that for the future, but that's a good question. Thank you for bringing that up.
Got another one here for you, Mario. I accidentally typed a response to it, but I figured I'd ask out. Can you show the difference for a high handicapper, say 25?
Say that again, Jason. I'm sorry. Can you repeat that?
Can you show the difference for a high handicapper on that, if there is one?
We don't have a specific example on here, but we could certainly go through and get you some information offline of what it would look like. This is, we chose kind of a middle of the range handicap here of 9.9 or 9.8. But again, we can take that and go through and give specific examples offline if somebody wants to see what their range would be at their club.
A couple more coming in here if we got just a second, Mario. So when I get ready for a match, I simply go to the app, plug in the relevant details, and it will tell me the handicaps necessary to prepare the match card.
Yeah, correct. What the app will do right now, if you have your other playing partner selected, one of the nice things about the Gin app that we're utilizing here in 2020 is it will automatically give you that course handicap for all 4 golfers, or just you and your partner, whoever it might be. Right now, the one thing it doesn't do that's going to come in a future release in May is actually be able to also calculate that handicap off the low individual in the foursome or in the group. That'll be coming soon, but right now it would tell you if you were a 12 and I was a 16 or whatever it might be, it would give you those numbers right inside the app, and that updates obviously in real time every night when the handicaps are updated. So that's a great use of the technology available to figure out your course handicap before you go out to the first tee that morning, is to go ahead and just queue that up in the app. You can save those frequent playing partners as your followed golfers on there, and go ahead and get everybody's updated course handicap before you go play.
All right, Mary, we got one last question before we move on to the next section here. Someone says, I have several friends that do not have a gin. They do not play frequently. How can I convince them that the 2020 handicap is no longer what it was in 2019? Should I just tell them that the course rating par should be added or subtracted from their old handicaps?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is, there's probably multiple discussions you need to have with those individuals who maybe lost faith or lost trust in the handicap system, but this is one of the nice perks you can mention to them, because, you know, previously a lot of times, unfortunately, what we saw was Section 3-5, which was in the old system as a way to make a match more equitable between people playing from different tees, wasn't always applied or wasn't applied correctly. And as a result, you'd have matches that weren't equitable in the way they should have been, and it could be frustrating if you were on the wrong side of that, right? And one of the nice parts of this system is that this is automatically done in calculation of the course handicap. It's just in there and it's done. So what I would say to that individual or those individuals would be, yeah, we have more checks and balances in place in this system to make everything more fair, to make it more fun to go out and play a match regardless of what your handicap index is. Any others, Jason? Are we going to go ahead and move on?
We are all good for now. All good to move on to the next section.
All right. Let's keep moving on here. We're going to talk about the playing handicap. This is a new term in the World Handicap System, and when handicap allowances are used in various formats of play, the course handicaps are adjusted to make the competition equitable. And within the new rules of handicapping, this adjusted course handicap will be referred to as a playing handicap. So what this is a very simple formula. It is just the course handicap multiplied by the handicap allowance. These allowances are, you're all familiar with, you play in a competition, you're playing at 90% or 80%. That's what we're talking about here with these percentages. So the one thing I want you to take away here in this new section of WHS is that if different tees are in use and there's a different par, the player's playing handicap is adjusted by the difference in par for the golfer playing from the higher par set of tees. Previously in the USGA handicap system, there was no additional adjustment when the pars were different. So here's an example for you. We have Joe Burrows, a 13.9 handicap index, playing the green tee at Fox Hill Country Club, which is a par 71. Playing against Andrea Dalton, who's playing the red tee, is a par 73, is a 7.5 index. And in this case, the handicap allowance is 90%. So here's how we would calculate the playing handicap for each golfer. Joe is on the left side of your screen here. We take his handicap index of 13.9, multiply by the slope rating of 130, divided by that constant of 113, plus that new component of course rating minus par, which in his case is 70.5 minus 71, multiply it by the 90% in this case, he comes out to a playing handicap of 14. And for Andrea, she is a 7.5 handicap index. We multiply it by the slope rating of 125, divide that by 113. Again, we add the new component, course rating minus par. In her case, that's 71.5 minus 73. Multiply that by 90%, she comes out to a 6. But since Andrea is playing the tee set with a higher par, she gets the difference in pars added to the handicap, which makes her par come out to 8 in this case, or her playing handicap come out to 8. So something new here, we are taking into account the difference in pars, and what we're doing there is adding that to the player with the higher, playing from the higher par set of tees to make that match more equitable. So again, what I want to stress here, what we want to go over before we get into some more questions and wrap this up, is the key takeaways for you here are the course handicaps. They might be lower than what you saw last year, but all golfers are affected equally across the board. So your strokes between players, the differences between two players for a match, they're probably going to be the same. There might be slight changes due to rounding, which actually that rounding is now more precise in the system because of where it takes place in the formula, like I discussed. And then we have that new adjustment for difference in pars that I just went over. And in reality, what you're left with at the end of the day is a more fair and equitable system that is more attractive to all golfers to utilize. So that's what we have for our presentation today. Before we finish things up, I'm sure we have some more questions, Jason. So let's see what we got.
Yep, we've got one so far, but I'm sure some more will flow in here. Do you recommend in a match playing off the low handicap player or as the strokes fall, if there is a significant difference in the individual hole handicap allocation?
You know, I think it's always easier to play off the low man in that match. It just seems a more simpler way to do it, and then you don't have to worry about calculating additional strokes. If there was maybe 2 strokes on one hole for one golfer and 1 for the other golfer, it's easier just to have the one play at scratching, the other get 1 stroke there. It's going to work out the same as the result of the match either way, but I think it's much easier to play off the low man in that case.
Gotcha. Well, it's looking like questions aren't flowing in as we thought here at the end. Just a reminder, if anything strikes you later or something pops in your head, you feel free to give us a call or shoot us an email. We're more than happy to answer any questions you have after the fact. Looks like we got a couple more here coming in. Here's one for you, Mario. In match play, how do you handle a hole in a mixed match where the men's par is 4 but the women's is 5? Is the winner based on net score or relative to par?
You can use the net score in that case, Jason, for the match.
All right, got another one here. When you're determining the net bogey score, what handicap should I use?
So the net double bogey score, that's a good question there because we've introduced 2 different handicaps in this presentation, right? You have the course handicap, the initial calculation. You have the playing handicap, which is the actual number of strokes you're going to receive on the golf course. And for net double bogey purposes, you use that course handicap, in essence, the higher number. So if you're looking at net par or net double bogey, you're always using that higher number before any additional adjustments to determine that net double bogey posting. You could also have for instance, if you were in a competition and if you were a 20.2 course or a handicap index and the maximum index allowed for usage in the competition was 18.0, and then you had a different playing handicap for that competition because of that, you're still using that full 20.2 handicap index to end up for your net double bogey purposes.
Just filtering through some questions here, Mario. Looks like Steve's got some answers.
And Jason, I just want to remind everybody, and I know I see a few other ones coming through there. We will have ample opportunity to reach out offline too to anybody with questions that may be about something off topic or anything we haven't covered here. We have been, as Jason said, putting those archives up on our website, gap.org/gap-webinars. We do have more webinars coming soon over the next week or 2. We're working to schedule them right now. We're trying to take advantage of this time when we're all at home in these quarantine situations. So what we want to do is be sure to continue to work and educate our golfers, especially as we have a new system like this World Handicap system. We're going to try and do as much as possible during this time to make sure everybody is ready to go when we get up and running.
All right, awesome. Well, looks like we're going to wrap up here. Just a reminder that anyone who submitted questions and did not have it directly answered by us, we will be responding via email to you. Thank you again for attending, and also keep an eye out for any announcements on new webinars. I know we have an exciting one coming out next Friday with myself and Daniel Schofield, the staff member referenced earlier.
And Jason, real quick, before we end up, I did just happen to click over and I saw a couple quick questions that I think I can run through a quick answer for.
Perfect.
One of them, David West asking about, for all a player needs to do to determine handicap strokes for matches, plug in the players to the app. And what other ways we can do that? Yes, that's one way to figure out your course handicap. You can certainly do that. The other way is, the other gin technologies, whether it's your posting kiosk at your club, you'll be able to go on there and look up your course handicap for the day. Also, we still will have course handicap conversion charts like you're used to seeing at the club. They're obviously using a new formula this year, and so those will still be available to use moving forward. If you go out, you go to your club and you want to look at your handicap index and see what's available for what you're going out for that day, that will still be an option. Also, another individual asked a question about the mobile app and seeing the course handicap, but where do you find the playing handicap? Well, if there's no allowances used in that competition and there's no differences in pars for the players, the course handicap is the playing handicap. There's no difference there. So the key there is your course handicap, and then if you're not playing at any other percentages, you don't need to do any other adjustments. If you were playing that at, say, 90%, you would need to figure out that 90% number on your own right now.
And Mario, just to add on that, we did have a product update on the app earlier this week, and the percentages for playing handicap is something on the roadmap, so it can be anticipated to be seen in the app coming soon.
Yep. All right, I think that's all we got. Thanks, Jason and Steve, for chiming in there, and thanks all of you for attending. And we'll make sure we look through the questions and cover anything that did not get brought up throughout the session here. And we want to thank you all for attending again. Appreciate it. Have a great day.